Coming back tonight, this is a good-looking Sunday night crowd to me. I cannot remember in the past how Sunday night has gone, but this looks really good to me. Thank you for being here, and I can officially say that the new year has begun. When the apple drops at Mount Vernon, the new year is here. Miss Carolyn McCall would be proud of us, and a tradition that she started and has been carried on. Now, if you will turn please to Revelation, the 13th chapter. I have become good friends with my robot friend at home, Alexa. And I asked Alexa before I came, I said, how long should I speak tonight, Alexa? And she said, till you get the job done. Therefore, you know, being best friends with a robot, I feel like I'm lost in space. That old program, you know, where Will Robinson and the robot were, well, anyway, you'd have to be on up in age to remember that program. Or you could go to YouTube. Thank God for YouTube, because the news on today is not very good, nor are the TV programs, but you can get some good stuff still on YouTube. Tonight I wanted to talk about the mark of the beast, and there's very little really for the sound system. Y'all can take you a nap. I'll wake you up right before we close. They won't be throwing verses here and there like they did this morning. They worked overtime this morning. So they need, basically there's just 4 points to the outline. But during this past week, I got to thinking that most churches I go to are interested in prophecy. There are preachers who are not. There are churches who are not. But most of the churches I go to, and I think that's why they invite me back, because they're curious about end times. And so I got to thinking, one of the questions that I usually get, now the problem is when you have a lot of people, you know, and you're going out the door, you might want to ask me something, but you don't want to hold up the crowd, and so we never get around to it. But one of the questions that a lot of people have is, where are we now in relation to the Lord's second coming, or the end of the world, or whatever you want to call it? So I wanted to, and probably I got to thinking tonight, if I was really smart, which I'm not, I should there are 4 of these things if I can remember them. I should give you one each night, and that way if you miss, see, you would be, and one of them's about Donald Trump, and it would be Wednesday night. That would be the one y'all would want to fire me on. So I could say, but I'm going to go ahead, you know, full speed ahead, and not going to talk very much about these because I've just got to looking at it just this week. I haven't had much time to look at it. And there are a lot of things people could bring up and say, well, is this a sign of the Lord's coming? Is this a sign? These various earthquakes, you know. I think the thing about earthquakes is not so much now that there are more of them, which there are, but their intensity. You used to never hear about an 8.0 earthquake. On the Richter scale, 7 is very powerful. You don't usually hear of an 8, and there have been some 8s lately. And so, you know, I'm not using that I'm just saying that could be one of the things. But anyway, I'll give you 4 quick things, and then we'll start on the mark of the beast. So Revelation 13 is where you need to be, but it'll take me a few minutes to get there. 4 signs or trends that I think we're moving toward the end of the age. And when I say this, I do not set dates. I would not listen to a preacher who sets dates. I don't care how smart he might seem to be. I wouldn't pay any attention. That in itself would rule him out. But, and you know, there have been people for a long time who thought the Lord was about to come. But there are 4 trends. Number 1 is, and I don't know how to describe, I mean, I can describe it to you, but I don't know what title to give it. But it's, there has been a movement toward an alliance towards the Islamic invasion of Israel. Bible scholars call it the Gog and Magog war, the war of Gog and Magog. It's described in Ezekiel 38 and 39. The old-timey preachers, early 1900s and mid-1900s, and when I was a child, they used to call it the Russian invasion of Israel. And Russia will be involved. But when you look at the other nations that will be assisting Russia, they're all Islamic. And see, we didn't know back in the 50s and 60s that Islam would become a threat, because back then Islam was a sleeping giant. But if you, and don't have time to go over all this now, but if you read Ezekiel 38 and 39, Ezekiel 38 and 39, you will find a group of nations that will come against Israel in the last days. The nations have changed names over the years, but the three major nations that will be involved in this invasion are Russia, Iran, and Turkey. Now, I don't watch the news. When I talk, people think, well, he must not do anything but listen to the news. No, I don't. But see, those three nations have never cooperated before in any kind of war. And now they're big buddies. It just happens that those are the three nations that will lead the invasion in Ezekiel 38 and 39. They're called there by different names. Russia's called Magog. Iran is called Persia. Turkey is called Togarma. But that's what those nations are. People have studied the movement of nations, tell us that's what. Now, if we had a map, those nations are on the northern border of Israel. And that's where the invasion will come from, according to Ezekiel 38 and verse 8. They will invade from the north. Well, see, here's what's interesting. Up until very recently, Turkey did not get along with the other two, Russia and Iran. Russia and Iran have been working together for quite a while. But Turkey, at one time, was a reasonable friend of Israel up until about 2011, somewhere along in there. Israelis used to go to Turkey for vacations. In November of 2015, Turkey shot down a Russian jet because it had strayed over into Turkish airspace. And it looked like for, a few weeks that there might be war between Russia and Turkey. But since then, amazingly, they have become best buddies. And the reason is the Turkish leader, Erdogan, I can't pronounce his name. I'm sorry. If you can pronounce it, you go right ahead. But he has consolidated his power in Turkey, and he is a very good friend of Vladimir Putin of Russia. So those three nations now, for the first time in history, have gotten together, and Turkey has turned against Israel. Turkey expelled the Israeli ambassador in May of this past year, and Israel has, threw out several Turkish officials. In other words, they're not speaking to each other anymore. Now, folks, this alliance cannot hold forever. I think this war in the Middle East is going to come pretty soon. Now, I'm not saying this year. It could very well be this year, but it can't hold forever. Events of prophecy, see, once they line up, nations come and go. They rise and fall. Leaders change. But I do believe that this is a trend that you can keep an eye on, because there is going to be an invasion. And as I said, you can read Ezekiel 38 and 39. That to me is a very clear trend that we're moving toward. And I'll just say tonight, since we're on national television, that this may be the next major event. I've heard preachers say, and I've even said it myself, but a lot of times we repeat stuff because we hear other preachers say it, and we don't really do our research. I've said that the rapture will be the next major event. This could precede the rapture, the invasion over there in Israel. But I'm not God. I'm just saying it could. All right, here's the second thing. And now I've made sort of jokes about it today, but it's artificial intelligence. The massive rise of, this is where I think it's a real problem. And I've just gotten, really in the last few weeks, just elementary grasp of what's going on here, because artificial intelligence is known as AI. If you see it on Facebook, it is a major, I say now, it's going to be a major problem. Artificial intelligence is, when you have like robots and stuff like that, just like I mentioned, Alexa, and those kind of things, they're going to become more. See, it's sad when we live in a world where a machine's smarter than a man. The man who made the machine's not as smart as the machine. What's going to happen when all these robots if they somehow can get connected, see? But as I was telling you now, this is something that I'm just now beginning to study. I need to do a lot more study on it and just bring a message just on artificial intelligence. But it is a problem. The Holy Spirit has revealed to me that this is a danger, an area where man is turning to these robots and stuff like that. In fact, I don't want to be ugly, but I was at a bank a few months ago, and they had installed a robot to, the cashier would take your check, give it to the robot, and the robot would spit out the money. And I don't usually speak up. I'm very quiet, but I said, I don't like this. Unfortunately, one of the leaders of the bank was in there that day doing some kind of, testing of she didn't particularly, everybody smiled except her. I said, y'all know this is going to put y'all out of a job pretty soon. The robot's going to be running this bank. But Alexa is in what they call a third generation. It's the kind we got this year. And like I said, I didn't go out and buy it. It was given to us as a Christmas gift. We don't know how to use it. About the most challenging thing we've asked Alexa is, what time is it? We could have got that off our cell phone. But anyway, hear this now. I'm not an authority on technology. I mean, I don't know anything. These kids here could run circles around me in the area of cell phones and iPhones and face talk and straight talk and the other stuff. Straight talk is what you don't hear from politicians, all right? But anyway, you can write that on the board tomorrow, Ansley. Yeah. But any device that you can talk to, and that device is connected to the internet, don't you know that that's the internet? If that device, which I call Alexa, can hear what you're telling Alexa, the internet is also picking that up, because that's what Alexa's connected to, and they also can hear what you're saying. Can anyone in here say 24-hour surveillance? That's it. And folks, this is just the beginning. Alexa is, as I said, the third generation, meaning they've come out with it, and they improved it, and then they improved it. It's just the beginning. It's going to be unbelievable what that thing will be able to do in just a few years. China, however, has got something even more scary. They call it Dragonfly. It is a robot-type device that can go through billions of pictures and in just a matter of seconds pick out one person. In that billions now, not millions, billions of pictures. And it can pick out one person out of all those pictures, and I mean in a matter of seconds. It can even pick out people who are in disguise. If somebody is, disguised themselves, it can recognize them. It can recognize people from pictures 30 years ago. And I can't even do that. Can you, Larry? Okay, me and Larry's getting younger and I'm getting older. I don't understand it. We graduated at the same time. But, and the thing about it now is you say, well, here's how China looks at that. They can find criminals, like in a huge mass of people. They can locate with Dragonfly. They can locate where that person is. But here's the problem. Criminals are not the only ones that the Chinese government is after. Christians, political dissidents, meaning people who, want to change the government there. In other words, here's the bottom line, class. I'm going to have to move on with this. If this stuff, and Google and Apple, and there's one other, and I can't remember if it's Facebook, but there's one of the big things, have already expressed an interest in using it here in America. They will have to, of course, pay China. No, I don't know how much money to get that, but it's coming to America. It may not be called Dragonfly here, but it's coming from China. And the thing about it is, it's going to make an individual citizen like me and you, we're not going to be able to stand up to oppressive governments, because what is going to happen when you go home and just in your conversations you say something bad about the President of the United States? They pick it up. You can be arrested, see. You will have no rights of privacy. To be honest with you, every nation on earth is already using some of this. Not the Dragonfly, but some of the AI stuff. And I just happened on this. I could not tell you how this happened. It wouldn't happen again if I tried, because I don't know anything about technology. But I was fooling around the other day on Facebook, and somehow, I don't even know how I got there. This is a mystery. But I got on Facebook, and I think I typed in Dragonfly or something. Anyway, one of the things this was on Facebook. Y'all are welcome to look it up. All of you know what Amazon is except me. To me, Amazon's a river down in South America. I don't know how to order off Amazon. I have never ordered off Amazon. I don't know how you do it. And it amazes me that people do stuff like this. But I've heard if anything in the world that you need, Amazon will have it. Anything. But anyway, in the year 2013, Amazon had 1,000 robots working at their warehouses. In 2018, 5 years, they now have 45,000 robots. I don't know what word to use. I can't say they're employed by Amazon. I don't guess the robots get a check. But they have 45,000. They've gone from 1,000 now to 45,000 in 5 years. It's called artificial intelligence, but it's better known as AI. If you hear that term in school or somewhere, be aware that what that means is that robot type, scientific things are taking over the world. Now, what that's going to do is make it easier for the mark of the beast and harder, for people to hide out, because they're going to know where you're at. Okay, number 3, and it's not nearly as exciting as that one, I guess, but number 3 is the turmoil in the European Union. Now, you might say, well, what's that got to do with the Lord's coming or the end times? All right, in Daniel chapter 2, this just turned the light on for me for Daniel chapter 2. In verses 41 and 42, Daniel describes at the end of time there will be a kingdom. Remember, he talked about the head of gold, the chest of silver, the belly of bronze, the legs of iron, the feet of iron and clay in his image that he saw. All right, and that had 10 toes, and we interpreted that as 10 nations that will come together and all that. All right, it's called the European Union. But in Daniel 2, 41 and 42, it tells us that the toes will be part iron and part clay. And I remember trying to explain that to y'all, that the iron meant strength and the clay meant weakness. That the final great kingdom in this world will have a mixture of strength and weakness. All right? That's what the European Union is. And that's where the Antichrist will come from. The European Union is a mixture of strength and weakness. It's really weird if you'll think about it, and I hadn't thought about it until I started doing the research. But on June 23rd, 2016, the United Kingdom, which I sometimes call UK, sometimes I call it England, sometimes I call it Britain, just, whatever. But technically it's called the UK, United Kingdom. They voted to pull out of the European Union. It's called Brexit. That's what the news media called it, Brexit, Brexit. All right, 2.5 years have gone by and they still haven't left. The news media predicted back in 2016 that when Great Britain pulled out of the European Union, that other nations would follow and the thing would collapse. It has not. But the mixture of nations in the European Union is really weird. Some of them are strong militarily, some of them are weak, iron and clay. Some of them are broke, like Greece. Some of them have a good economy, like Germany. And they can't even agree on the money. And they fuss about the open borders and stuff like that, who can be allowed into these countries, and yet they stay together. In my opinion now, this is just my opinion, if the European Union splits this coming year, you can just say, Brother Robert missed that one. But I predict that no matter what happens, they're going to stick together. Now, some of the nations might drop out, others may come in, but they're going to stay together because that's where the Antichrist will come from. And if that whole thing crumbled, then I don't know where he'd come from, see? So I'm just saying that the European Union is, and if you just really do your research, you'll find that it's a weird alignment of nations, of peoples that normally don't have anything in common. In fact, Germany, the United Kingdom, and France are all in it. Italy, they fought 2 world wars again. And see, it's strange, though, that doesn't fall apart. It should have fallen apart, but it hasn't. And I think it's because that one day an Antichrist is going to come from there. So when you keep your eye on Israel, which I told you this morning, if you want to be a student of prophecy, study Israel, but keep another eye on Europe. Because America's on the downward elevator, even though Donald Trump's trying to turn the elevator around, and Europe is going up. Number 4, and this is the last one, and we'll get to the mark of the beast. Trends that I think will lead to the coming of the Lord, the end of time as we know it, the end of this age of grace. And that is, and I think I may have mentioned this here before, but it's the tremendous interest in globalism, of putting the world together. The idea is that the world has so many problems. We have nations with nuclear weapons who could set off a war at any time. And what we need is a world government with a world leader who can make everybody behave. Guess who that world leader will be? The Antichrist. All right, dear. This is probably going to offend some of you, and please take this in love, if you will, and not as a smart alecky. I know that everybody in here is not a Republican. Everybody in here is not a Democrat. I am not a Republican. I am not a Democrat. I am disgusted with both parties. But history tells us that it's almost impossible to start a third party. I do not recommend that. You may say, well, I'm really aggravated at the Republicans because they didn't do anything about Obamacare. They promised they were going to change Obamacare. They didn't do it. They won't help Trump build the wall, with Mexico there to try to make us safer. Yeah, I'm thoroughly disgusted with the Republicans, and I'm thoroughly disgusted with the Democrats. But I am not in favor of a third party. What I think should happen, and of course this is going to have as much influence as me going out next year for the Atlanta Braves. But what I think should happen is that they should change the name of the Democrat Party and the Republican Party and change the name to the Globalist Party and the Patriot Party. And when I say that, some people should shift. There's some Republicans who are actually Democrats in disguise. They should shift to the Globalist Party. See, I get so mad. I forgot to bring my blood pressure medicine tonight, so I'm going to have to hurry along on this. But where in the world did we get this Mueller investigation? It has cost millions of taxpayer dollars for nothing. In all previous presidential elections, and we have had presidential elections, George Washington was unopposed, but starting with the second, we've had presidential elections for over 200 years. There's no doubt been crookedness and stuff in most all of them. In fact, in the election of 1876, it was clearly bought. I mean, it was an election where 3 states sent in duplicate. Democrats sent in one set of ballots, Republicans another, and so the Congress had to meet and figure it out. Ended up the guy that won by 1 vote. But see, when the election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton was over, it's all right to say, I don't like the way it came out, I didn't like Trump, but folks, we need to go on. We don't need to spend our time doing it. So what? Nothing has been proved, and even if the Russians colluded, whatever that means, it's not against the law. We're wasting our time and money. So why has Hollywood and the news media have such hatred for Donald Trump? Now, I'm going somewhere now. I'm not telling you to vote for Donald Trump. I'm not telling you that Donald Trump is a born-again Christian. I don't know that. He claims to be, but I don't know that, okay? I'm not going to be on that committee. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit will decide that. But God does not have to have a Christian to turn a country around. He used heathens in the past. We've just come through the Christmas story. Who started that? Augustus Caesar, a heathen. Made his decree that everybody had to go back home and register. He thought he was the boss, but God was running that. I believe God has given America one last chance. That's what I believe. See, here's why they hate Donald Trump. It's one thing to say you don't like him, and that's fine. You are an American. You can vote for Donald Trump. You can vote for Hillary. You can vote for Bernie Sanders. You are an American citizen. You are free right now. But what I'm saying is, when the election is over, let's go on. And the world is headed, as we saw this morning, for a one world government. Remember Revelation 13:7? He will have power over all kindreds, nations, and tribes and tongues. We're headed for a one world government. I'm going to prove to you tonight, in just a minute, I know y'all are getting restless, but just the mark of the beast, be a one world economy. Everybody in the world will be using the same, economy, whatever they call it. They call it dollars, rubles, whatever they call it. Okay? In Revelation 17, which we're not going into, talks about basically a one world church. So if you have a one world government and a one world economy and a one world church, folks, that is called globalism. It is in direct opposition to what is called nationalism. If I were a nationalist, I would be in favor of America. I would say, God bless America, and let's stand for the national anthem. But if I'm a globalist, then I feel like we ought to give up our rights to help all these other peoples and transform America from a superpower to a third world country. And the main obstacle to the world getting together as one is America. And what is Donald Trump's motto? Make America great again. What is wrong with that? Why wouldn't you want America to be great? You might say, well, I agree with the slogan, but I don't like Donald Trump. I understand. I'm not on the Trump committee. I'm just telling you that he is the reason there's so much hatred. All these Hollywood movie stars that hate him, and by the way, most of them said they would leave if he was elected, they're still here. All right? They liked him until he became president. But see, he is an obstacle. If he could rebuild America's factories, put people back to work, give people jobs, then Americans would not be interested in no world government because we would be proud of our government. I call him a speed break of history. That's my name for Donald Trump. He's a speed break on the road to history because we know that ultimately there is going to be a one world government. I can holler and scream, jump up and down. It's not going to change. But I don't want it to be in my lifetime, and I don't want my children, and I don't want my grandchildren to grow up in a one world country where you have to take a mark to buy and sell. God, and by the way, whether Donald Trump is a Christian or not, he has been more favorable to Christians than any president in my lifetime, and I go back to Eisenhower. Eisenhower is the first president I remember, and I have never seen a president, Democrat or Republican, that has been as favorable to Christians as he has. Did you notice this past Christmas, just 2 weeks ago, the businesses in town that had Merry Christmas on their door? I had 3 consecutive clerks at Walmart tell me Merry Christmas without me doing it, and I didn't initiate it. They just said Merry Christmas. It was so refreshing. I am so sick of happy holidays. I'd rather you just say nothing. Don't even send me a text if all you're going to say is happy holidays. What holiday are you talking about? Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Christmas, Thanksgiving? Be specific. If I ask you where you worked and you said, oh, I work in town, I wouldn't tell me much. You work in town. So if I start early tomorrow in Baxley, I might find you by the end of the day. All right, I'm just saying that that's the reason they hate Donald Trump. It's not because he's doing bad stuff. I'm not saying he's perfect. I know he's arrogant at times. I know he is his own worst enemy. Sometimes he sticks his foot in his mouth and all that. But I'm just saying the stupid. I'm hoping they'll do this year. They did it last year. I don't know who does this. They had the 10 best fake news stories of 2017. I'm hoping they'll do that again this year because there's some doozies out there. Trump didn't go visit the military on Christmas Day. First president in so many years, and turned out not only did he go visit them, he went to Iraq, where the bombs were falling and everything around. But the media, they don't ever make it clear. When they do something silly and say lies about him, they don't ever apologize. But anyway, I've had my say, as old Amos McCoy used to say on the real McCoys. I've had my say. Now I'm ready to talk about the mark of the beast. I hope y'all are not ready to go home yet. Maybe this should have been maybe I should have taken, but I'd already had the outlines run off. So I had to do something. All right, the mark of the beast. If you read Revelation 13, to save you time, I'll just tell you this. The first 10 verses are about the Antichrist, who is called the first beast. The verses 11 to 18 is about the second beast, Now, he's referred to in Revelation 13 as the second beast, meaning he is an assistant to the Antichrist. But in Revelation 19, in verse 20, when they are thrown into the lake of fire, he's called a false prophet. So I will use the term second beast and false prophet interchangeably, okay? Just put it in your mind, I'm talking about the same person. He will be an assistant to the Antichrist. The Antichrist will be the global leader of the world, and this second beast will be his associate. Now, there's a company, and I checked this out on the internet. Now, yeah, I understand if I see something on Facebook, I about got where I don't even believe anything. And I hate to say that because I used to sort of get excited about Facebook, but there have been so many lies on there in the past few weeks. And when they put stuff on Facebook and they don't document it, where it came from, don't pay any attention to it. You're liable to see anything, you know, UFOs landing and at the White House and everything else. But I checked this out now as best I know. I'm telling you all the truth. But if this is a lie, then internet's pushing it too. There is a company in Wisconsin called 3 Square Market. They have 50 employees. It's a vending company. You know, they go around and take money out of the vending machines and fill them, stock them and all that. Well, their employees agreed to have a microchip implanted between their thumb and forefinger, right here. Now, that is not the mark of the beast, but it is leaning that way because with this microchip, they don't need a key anymore to get in their buildings, their machines. That chip, it's got all that stuff for them. The CEO of that company said it was done for convenience. He's right. Other companies are going to follow that, and that's the way we're headed. Certainly tonight, if we believe the Bible, and Brother Darrell has made it clear that he believes the Bible, and if y'all hadn't figured it out yet, I believe the Bible. Even if there's verses I don't understand, I believe it. We are headed in that direction, and it sort of blends in with the AI as well, you know. The idea that we can have a chip implanted, and that chip will have all kind of information on it and stuff like that. Even medical people are talking about the need for a microchip, that you need one, because what if you were out here and got in a wreck and you were not able to talk and give any information, your wallet was gone and all that? How would they know who you were? But if you had that chip, they could identify you, see, know who you are. So also I want to talk about the number 666. That might be the most fascinating part of this. There's 4 parts. Number 1, what is the mark of the beast? Number 2, what is the significance of 666? Number 3, what are the purposes for the mark of the beast? And number 4, do we have the technology already available for it to be put into action? Number 1, what is the mark of the beast? The mark of the beast is the idea of the second beast of Revelation 13. Remember I told you there were 2. The first one will be the Antichrist. The second one will be a false prophet, which also, with that name, false prophet, indicates that he may have some religious connections. I am thinking, this is my opinion, that he will be in charge of the world church that is coming. Okay? But he's going to come up with this idea, and to make it simple, the mark of the beast is going to be a way of identifying you so that you can be identified as a loyal follower of the Antichrist. Whatever he calls himself, I'm sure he's not going to call himself the Antichrist, but whatever he calls himself, if it's the New World Order, by the way, that's from George H.W. Bush. I know y'all excited about what a great American he was, and he was a great American, but he also had the idea of a global. That's where the globalism thing started in our White House. And Clinton felt the same way, and George W. Bush was the same way, and Barack Obama. They're all alike. That's why none of them like Trump. See, Trump is a man without a party, but I wish y'all wouldn't bring that up because it sounds political. All right, Now, you're going, once they come out with the mark of the beast, and I'm going to explain to you as best I can what it is, but it's going to be a way for you as a citizen to identify yourself as a supporter of the world leader, who we call the Antichrist. And if you don't take it, you will be killed, according to Revelation 20 and verse 4, and you will most likely be beheaded. Everyone is going to have to make a decision in that day. It's amazing to me how many people come to church and walk out and say, I believe what the preacher said. I believe that Jesus is coming one day. I know that I'm going to die sometime, but I'm not ready right now to make a decision. But you will have to in that day. You will have to decide. You cannot be neutral. Did you see? Well, let me read the scripture. Revelation 13, verse 16. And he causeth, there's the second beast, causeth all, A-double-L, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, that means free and slave, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Everyone is going to have to make a decision. You can leave here tonight and say, I really don't like that little preacher. He's too loud, or he's not loud enough, or he doesn't jump up and down, or whatever. But you can be neutral about me, but you're going to have to make a decision then. You have to choose sides. Now, here's the deal, folks. Do you think a world leader can convince people to have a mark put on their body in order to buy and sell? Before you answer, I have some more information. Consider tattoos. All right, now tattoos are not the mark of the beast. But just a few years ago, and certainly when I was growing up, which was more than a few years, but I'm not as old as y'all think. Just a few years ago, the only people having a tattoo was considered degrading. It was something that only lower class people and drunken sailors would do to alter their body. Have you seen professional athletes lately? It's easiest to see in professional basketball, what we call the NBA. Because, see, a basketball player, their uniform doesn't cover as much as a football or baseball player. And some of these guys playing basketball have got tattoos all down their arms. In fact, I think LeBron does, doesn't he? I used to like LeBron, but I mean, he's got tattoos everywhere. Now, here's what I'm getting at. If people are so used to seeing tattoos, and about everybody's getting them now, especially young people, then when somebody says, let's put this mark on you so that you can be identified as a true follower of the Antichrist, folks, it ain't going to be no big deal. It's just one more mark. If you got tattoos already all over your body, what's one more mark going to do? What I'm trying to tell you is, tattoos, I'm not here to speak against tattoos, although I don't want one. But the mark of the beast is just going to be another mark on your body, another thing to go with the tattoos you've already got. All right, now, the second point, I think, I can't remember what it is, about 666, isn't it? But do you understand the first point? It's a way for you to identify. Oh, I know what I'm leaving out. See, I used to think this is why we need to keep studying. We don't ever need to think, well, I don't need to read that. I already know all about prophecy. And I do not believe the mark of the beast will be a microchip implanted under the skin. Now, that might happen. That might happen. Would y'all hear this? It could happen. But the Greek word in the Bible was translated out of Greek, New Testament, for mark is charagma. and it means an engraving. Watch it now. It's going to be visible. It's going to be visible. A chip can be invisible. Who would know if you had a chip implanted? But a engraving. Now I know it says there in verse 16 that they'll receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, but that word in, the preposition in, is epi in Greek, and it means upon. The mark will be upon your right hand or upon your forehead. In other words, it will be visible. When you walk down the street, you will know who is a follower of the world order and who is not. And who is not is going to be arrested and put to death. But this 666, I'm sorry, I almost missed that. That's very important. The preposition here in the Greek would change that from in to on. But, it's no big deal. What about the 666? It's been a lot. Even people who don't even go to church know that 666 is some kind of magic number or omen or bad luck or something, even if they don't go to church. Everybody in here has heard of 666, haven't you? I was in line at the Piggly Wiggly in Hazelhurst a few years ago, and the lady ahead of me only had a couple of things, and her bill come out to $6.66. That lady immediately reached back and got a pack of chewing gum and put it on the counter there so her bill wouldn't be $6.66. I can tell you another preacher's wife who bought some stuff Friday night, less than 48 hours ago, and it come out to $6.66. And I believe she told the clerk just to keep the change. All right, now folks, look, don't we know that if that lady, and I won't mention the other lady, but the first one there at the Piggly Wiggly, don't you know that if she had not got that pack of chewing gum, that she would not be taking the mark of the beast just because a couple of items ended up $6.66. That's not the mark of the beast. But it's something about that number sort of bothers us, doesn't it? I mean, suppose you were flying tomorrow from Atlanta to Chicago, and you called the airport, you called Delta, and you confirm your reservations, and they say, yes, you will be flying tomorrow out of Atlanta Hartsfield International Airport. Your flight will leave at 9:40, flight 666 to Chicago. That would make me a little nervous, wouldn't you? I believe I would call back and ask for a later flight. Now, we know that the people who got on that airplane would not be taking the mark of the beast, but somehow we just look at it as something bad. We don't want to be associated with it. If y'all numbered your pews and you had one 666, nobody'd sit on it. We just sort of feel like by being involved with that number, we're doing something wrong. But now here's the key, verse 18. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding, do y'all have understanding? Count the number of the beast. So we're going to be dealing with numbers. I love numbers. For it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Now, folks, we are counting, I want to say this again, on the rapture of the church. I am not looking for the Antichrist. I am looking or waiting or listening for a trumpet. But if y'all don't get saved, somebody's going to be here. If not, your children, your grandchildren, your neighbors, your friends. Don't just sit here and say, well, I'm not worried about it, I'm going to go to heaven. I'm not worried about all this stuff. If you got that kind of attitude, I believe I'd double check and see if I was really sure enough saved. Because if you're really saved, you'll be burdened about others. You won't be just thinking, I'm going to get out of here okay, and I don't care what happens to the rest of the world. but it deals with the process of numbers. It's called gematria. It's a new word for you. Gematria, spelled G-E-M-A-T-R-I-A. I don't know who invented it, but I can tell you how it works. I can give you a simple illustration of it, but I'm not sure it's going to help us here. Gematria means to assign a number to the letter of each letter of your name. It's got a number assigned to it. Okay, let me give you an easy one. All right, if we use gematria to try to determine somebody's name, A in the American alphabet equals 1. B equals 2. C equals 3. Don't y'all know I did a lot of research to remember that? All right, you get the idea, don't you? You go down through 26 letters, and each letter, in fact, you could go home and do your name. You might be the Antichrist yourself. You know, go home and look up your name. Each letter in your name has a numerical value. And what it's saying there is no matter what the Antichrist calls himself, if he calls himself Bill Smith or, you know, whatever, when you add up the letters in his name, it's going to come out the 666. And there will be people in the tribulation who are not going to take the mark of the beast. And there will be people who will figure out who he is. No matter how popular he is, they're going to look at that name and the letters, and it's called gematria, but you don't have to worry about that. Just understand that each letter of the name. Now, that's doing it in English. But I'm assuming here that to figure out the identity of the Antichrist, you have to do it in Greek. Because, see, the Bible was written in New Testament in Greek. Greek has 24 letters in the alphabet, while we have 26. Most of you that went to college are familiar with Greek because that's where your fraternities and sororities and all that stuff, you know, I can't remember all of them. But there were Greek letters, you know, Alpha and Omega, beginning, the end, and all that stuff. All right, Hebrew has 22 letters. And it could be now that his name will have to be translated out of Hebrew. I don't know. All I'm saying is that in that day, somebody will be able to figure out who he is by the letters of his name and adding up the numerical value of each letter, and it'll come out 666. Now, if y'all say, well, I'm going to go home tonight and I'm going to put in Donald Trump and Barack Obama and this one and that one, we're not to do it now. We're not in the tribulation. It ain't going to work for you, because you can actually make several people come out 666. With 7 billion people on earth, there are going to be thousands of people who, if you took the English, and again, we're doing it in English. What if it's in Greek? Can y'all do it in Greek? So you'd have to learn every Greek letter and assign a value to that. But anyway, that's how they're going to know. That's what the 666 means. It means that you take the letters of his name, each letter has a numerical value, and it's going to come out to 666. But if you try to do it now, you're going to jump the gun, because we're not in the tribulation right now. It ain't going to work. I can say one thing: if somebody in here is smart enough that you've already figured out the 666 and who it goes with, I have some bad news for you. You have been left behind. Because it's going to be in the tribulation for them to figure. So if I say, I think so-and-so's the Antichrist, and you say, well, what about so-and-so? It's just guesswork. And it would be that way if y'all had Jack Van Impe up here tonight, or some of these guys, Hal Lindsey, or some of these guys that are on TV all the time, you know, with prophecy. They don't know either. So when I say I don't know, I don't feel bad about it, because nobody else knows either. But in the tribulation, it'll make sense, because that will be the way that they will determine, you know, the true believers now. There will be people, because God's going to have 144,000 evangelists out preaching, according to Revelation chapter 7. the word's going to go out. When people make a decision to take the mark of the beast, they'll make it deliberately. It will not be sneaked up like 2019 snuck up on us. It won't happen like that. I suspected 2019 was coming anyway, didn't you, Neil? We got to the last day of 2018, I thought, I bet 2019 will be next. You know, I do a lot of study. But what's the deal about 6? Why isn't it 999? Why wouldn't that be the mark of the beast? Well, that'd be calling George Sink, the lawyer. That's for those of you that watch the trial shows on TV. All right, why is it going to be 6? All right, 6 is man's number. Man was created on the 6th day of creation week. Did y'all hear that? Did you young people hear that? Man was created on the 6th day of creation week. Not a piece of slime that millions of years later turned into a man, but man was created on the 6th day. I'd like to tell a joke here, but it's getting too late. All right, but why 3 6s? Okay, because there is a trinity of evil, just as there is a trinity of good. There is Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, the good trinity. All right, the first 6 stands for Satan. The second 6 is the Antichrist. And the third 6 is that second beast, the false prophet. 6, 6, 6. Okay? Point number 3. What are the purposes of the mark of the beast? There are 2, and I'll go over them quickly. Number 1, and in a way this will be redundant, but it is a visible indicator of your loyalty to the Antichrist. So you won't have to do anything in that day to go to jail. Just don't take the mark of the beast. They'll come get you. You will be considered disloyal. You will be considered an enemy of the state. By the way, that's about the way America was headed until Trump came in, giving us a little more freedom, a little breathing room. All right? Did you know now, do you know, you should, that the devil is an imitator? That everything God does, the devil tries to copy it? Okay, one person knows. That's a majority. All right. Did you know that God had already sealed his? Revelation chapter 7, verse 3. God had put a seal upon those 144,000 so they could be identified as followers of Jehovah or Yahweh, however y'all want to pronounce it. And so the devil's going to think, well, that's, I believe I'll just seal mine. It's amazing to me that the devil can stay in operation. He never has an original thought. You will never find in the Bible where Satan thought of something. He always takes what God has done. He saw that it was good, and so he takes it and flips it and turns it to evil. Always. So that is one of the purposes of the mark of the beast, is to identify you. And the second reason is it will be the centerpiece of a world economy. Remember, the world is headed for a one world economy. That will be the center. Without it, you cannot buy or sell. Don't you know it has to be visible? If it was invisible, underneath the skin, how would you know anybody had it? Suppose everybody had an invisible chip or a chip implanted, microchip, and you went to the farmer's market one Saturday morning to buy some greens or something, and the farmer's there, and the farmer wouldn't know if you had the mark or not because it's under your skin. You wouldn't know if he had it or not because it's under your skin. It's got to be visible so you'll know who's got it. And it must be worldwide, because otherwise you just move and get away from it. See, if it was only in Europe, you could move to somewhere else. Go to Australia, go to the United States, go to, to another continent somewhere, go to Asia. But it must be worldwide. See, that's why we know there's coming a world economy. If you don't take this mark, you cannot buy or sell. Those are economic terms. Now, I think a lot of people have the idea that that means I won't be able to go to Walmart. Listen, dear, it's going to be far more than that. You won't be able to buy anything. I always tell people, if you're not going to be saved, you better look for you an automobile that'll get 7 years out of one tank of gas, because you won't be able to go and buy gas. At the gas pump, you will have to have that mark. You will have electricity for 1 month, and then they'll cut your electricity off, because if you don't have the mark, you won't be able to, so you'll be in the dark. If you just wander out in your yard, if you say, well, you know, I'm just going to wander out here and cut the grass or something, and somebody sees you and turns you in, you will be arrested. I'm going to just say this. I don't believe there's anywhere in Appling County that you're going to be able to hide. I think if you do not accept Jesus Christ as your Savior and have your sins covered by the blood, I don't believe you've got a chance to make it. And now I do believe there's going to be a hiding place over in the Middle East. I think it'll be in Jordan, but that's just my opinion. But it ain't going to be in Baxley. It won't be in Surtsey. I have one final thing to say if y'all got time. And I don't know when your appointment at Zaxby's is or Dairy Queen. But I have one final thing, and that is the technology available? This is very important now. Do they have the technology right now? If the Antichrist took over tomorrow, do they have the technology for the mark of the beast? The answer is definitely yes. You might be saying, well, why don't they use it? If they have the ability to use it, and they have the ability to track us, why don't they do it? And the answer is, we're not ready for it yet. Americans are not ready. See, here's the deal. You will turn over your freedom to a world leader who you trust will protect you. It's a matter of freedom versus security. Which would you rather have? Go back to 9/11 day, September 11th, 2001, when they hit the World Trade Center. Over 3,000 people were killed that day, and there was quite an uproar in this country. Some people even got along for a day or two. But what if some terrorist group got hold of a dirty bomb and exploded a nuclear, even if it was a primitive form of a nuclear weapon, in downtown New York City, and instead of 3,000 people being killed, there were 3 million? You know what would happen then? There would be an uproar in this country to give up our freedom, but we want the government to protect us. That's what I think is going to happen. I think one of these days there's going to be a terrorist attack that is so catastrophic that Americans will buy into the idea of let's give up our freedom if the government will protect us. The technology is here. How many of you, just for fun, how many of you young people, most of them over here, but there may be some young people over here besides Larry. Larry's going to get tired of this, but that's a compliment. How many of you go to college now? Anybody? Would you just raise your hand? I'm not going to embarrass you. Nobody in this building? Nobody? One person? All right, I'm going to tell you something, and y'all can tell me if it's still this way, okay? But you're going online, aren't you? When I was in college, I enjoyed the lunchroom. I was the only one that did. I loved the cafeteria. Everybody else said it's slop. But you know what we did in college? We bought a meal ticket. And you went through the line and they stamped your ticket. That way you couldn't keep eating all day, you know. You had so many. All right. I have heard, that's why I wanted a college witness here tonight. I have heard that that's not the way they do it now in college. They don't have, now somebody might be going to a college that still has meal tickets and all that. But I've heard several people tell me that they have like thumbprint, they do that, retinal scan, all kinds of ways of identifying you without having to stamp your thing, In fact, I had a young man the other day, he goes to Georgia Southern, no need to, and we're talking about money, and I was explaining it. I didn't understand credit cards, debit cards, all this stuff. I get in line always at Walmart. Somebody's got some kind of card. I don't know what they're doing. And I'm standing there in line. He said, well, I really don't take much money with me. So we don't use money. I thought I'd be lost here. I wouldn't know how to get by. But see, the world is changing, folks. Stuff that me and you thought years ago people had to have. They don't have to have it anymore. It's electronic now. All of you teacher retirees, help me out. You don't get a check every month from the teacher retirement. It's deposited in your bank. Social Security. See, things have changed. We're getting used to the idea of not seeing money. I was at Midway. I'm trying to quit. I am trying to quit. Please forgive me, but I only come once a year. I know I'm long-winded, but I only come once a year. By the way, we'll start on the actual Bible study tomorrow night, in case y'all are thinking, where's the study of Revelation? He's rambling around talking about this. We'll start on the study tomorrow night. All right. Now I forgot what I was going to tell y'all. Midway. Key battle of World War II. But my brain is telling me that's not what I was going to tell y'all. Midway Baptist Church. Does that sound more familiar? In Appling County. All right, a couple of years ago, I called myself, loosely used the phrase interim pastor in a very generic way. In other words, I did nothing but go and eat on Wednesday nights and try to say something on Sunday. But Wednesday night prayer meeting, I don't know how y'all do it, and I don't know the perfect way to do it, but what we did at Midway is they would have a prayer list printed out, and we'd take the prayer list and we'd go over each name. Some of them would know something about them and some of them wouldn't. And then when we finished, we'd have prayer, and then what time we had left, we'd have Bible study. Well, somebody brought up a name, and I don't remember the name, but it was a lady in Baxley that was a type 1 diabetic. And if you're a type 1 diabetic, you don't want your blood sugar to get too high. You know what happens to you when your blood sugar shoots up into the hundreds and you're a type 1 diabetic, you will go into a coma. And this lady had apparently had that happen before, so she sort of knew when her body, the sugar level was, and of course you can check it, but she could tell she was getting way on up there. And so she called 911. Baxley, Georgia now, 911. But in the meantime, her dialing the number, she passed out, the coma. Her blood sugar got so high she passed out. So the 911 operator gets a phone call, but the lady at the other end can't talk. She's unconscious. Me and you would say, well, that's tough, isn't it? You know what 911 in Baxley did? They traced that call and sent the EMTs and found her unconscious in her front yard. Now, she didn't die, not at that time. I don't know what's happened since, but I mean, they were able to rescue her. Now, can you imagine getting a phone call, the person says nothing, and yet you can track that call? In Baxley, this is not exactly the metropolitan capital of the United States. Don't you know if they've got that kind of technology in Baxley? Can you imagine what Big Brother in Washington knows about you, especially if you've been talking to these robots on the internet? Yes, the technology is here. The problem is for the politicians to convince the electorate that this is to our best interest to join in this global stuff. That's what President Obama was doing. He joined and Bush, both of them. They had pushed the United States into joining all these human rights organizations, global warming treaties, and this and that. And then Trump has pulled it out. Now, the next president will probably go right back to it. In my opinion, I'm going to say this: the Second Amendment debate is about the right to bear arms. In other words, do you have a right to keep a weapon at your house and so forth? I believe that debate, I don't believe a court will turn that over because that's in the Constitution. But what if our government signs an agreement with the United Nations about weapons? Which would be higher, class? A United Nations agreement or the United States Constitution? See where I'm going? That's what they're going to do one day. I'm predicting that now. I'm not telling you the Lord showed me that. That's just my opinion. Because to overturn the Second Amendment is unconstitutional in itself. I mean, that's in the Constitution. But if there's something higher than the Constitution, and it would have to be a world type, that's where we're headed. A couple of quick things. Number one, nobody has taken the mark of the beast yet. No one has taken the mark of the beast yet. The dumbest, I wish it wasn't so late at night, I could tell you all this. Well, I believe I'm going to do it anyway. The dumbest billboard ever put up in the United States was put up in Baxley, Georgia. We have a drum roll. I'll tell you where it was at. Thank you. It's one advantage of being at a church where the band leader's here. All right. Got his students here. All right. Right below Captain Joe's on the Searcy Highway, going to Searcy. A few years ago, the Seventh-day Adventist Church had a billboard that said if you went to church on Sunday, you were taking the mark of the beast. Now, they've got it down now. It's not out there anymore, but it was there for a few years. I don't know how many of you remember it and how many of you look. See, I don't pay attention, but I even saw that. It was a giant billboard. The billboard's still there, but I don't know. The Seventh-day Adventists took the sign down. But they still believe that. They believe that me and you go to church on Sunday, we're taking the mark of the beast because they say you need to go on Saturday. Okay, if this is taking the mark of the beast, y'all coming to church today, when you go to Sarah's on Sunday to eat, do they check you at the door to see if you've got a mark on your hand? Of course not. They don't care at Sarah's. What they're interested in is you give them the money and you go on. They don't check you over for a mark. You see how stupid that was? And it was in Baxley. I'm sure they had them in other places. I mean, you know, I didn't travel the whole 50 states looking for a billboard. But I'm just saying that they had that up until just a few years ago. It was right there beside Captain Joe's. Also, be aware of this, and then we're having the conclusion. Be aware of this, that we are not, if we have the technology for the mark of the beast, we are not going to abandon our technology. I mean, I don't like to say this. I'm going to make this point because some of you are visitors and y'all won't be back. Some of you are Mount Vernoners and you won't be back either. But I do not trust our voting machines. I'm sorry if you work and if you help people vote, it's not your fault. You don't set the things up. You plug them in. But if they can hack all this stuff on Facebook, don't you know they can hack an election machine? I mean, I'm just telling you, I don't trust. I wish we'd go back to paper ballots where you'd have a paper trail and you could recount. If you felt like somebody had cheated, you could recount the votes. When you vote on that voting machine, you don't know what it registers. All you know is you pull this lever, but there's no telling what the voting machine did. But we're not going back, I'm sure, because they've invested millions and millions and millions of dollars in the voting machines. Young people are not going to wake up tomorrow morning and say, you know, I've been using my cell phone too much lately. I have not been talking to my friends. I've just been texting them. And I believe I'll just leave my cell phone at home and go to school, and that ain't going to happen. See, what I'm saying is we're not going to turn back. And if the technology is here, it's just a matter of time before somebody, like I said, they just need an excuse to have everybody give up their freedom in order for security. Now, I'm calling this closing. Jonathan, that means you and Kim can come, and anybody else that wants to lead singing, but it won't be me. Last church I was at, Ansley, they hid the songbook from me. Last 2 weeks I was there, I couldn't find it. They said, turn to page so-and-so. I picked up what I thought was a songbook. It was a Bible. But anyway, those bad memories are behind me now. I'm trying to forgive and forget. When the final political guru, known as the false prophet, assistant to the Antichrist, comes up with this plan of having people identified with a mark on your forehead or right hand, it's going to do some things that I can just hear the media now. They're going to say on CNN, wow, why didn't we think of this before? You know what it's going to do? It's going to eliminate immediately the fastest growing crime in the United States, identity theft. It'd be eliminated immediately. Won't worry, it don't matter if you left your credit card in Walmart and left, or debit card. They can't do nothing with it. The material is in your head and on your forehead. Banks. I know we have people here that used to work at a bank. They may be retired now. They're sliding down behind somebody right now. Banks, ask anybody that works at a bank. They are drowning in paperwork. Mark of the beast is going to eliminate all that. You don't need all this paperwork. Be on your head, your forehead, all your information. But here's the downside, and I'll be through. But got a couple of problems. Number one, you will take that mark on purpose. You will not be deceived. You'll know what you're doing. But see, here's your options. If you don't take it, you will starve to death or be beheaded. It's going to be hard in that day to say, you know, I know this man isn't God, but I want to eat. I want my family to eat. The second problem is this: if you take the mark of the beast, you can never be saved. You can't change your mind. You can't go back and say, oh, well, I just happened to find a copy of the Bible and I see now what this is. I want this removed. It is an eternal identification with the Antichrist. And you will end up where he ends up, in a lake of fire. I know people don't like to hear it, but I'm just telling you what the Bible says. Revelation, the 14th chapter, verses 9 and 10, is the proof now, because things aren't going to happen because I said so. What I tell you, I can back it up with the Bible, or either I'll say, this is just my opinion. You know, I've done that a few times tonight. But if I back it up with the Bible. Revelation 14, verses 9 and 10, says that anyone who takes the mark of the beast will be tormented day and night forever and ever and ever. In other words, you can never repent. No one has yet taken it. So y'all don't have to say, well, I think I had a friend. I don't see, did Jonathan come? Boy, he must be fast. He just flew by me. That's all that band-directing and stuff does. He gets in shape. He just flew right on. I didn't even see him come up. I'm just saying to you tonight, you won't be able to change your mind, but you've still got time right now to decide. That's the good news. See, you haven't taken it yet. You haven't been offered it yet. But you could change. You could move tonight from the devil's side to God's side. But you're going to have to be on one or the other in that day. You say, well, I'm looking for the rapture. Yeah, but you've got children. You've got grandchildren. You've got people you love. You don't want them to take this. They're not going to understand this. After Jesus comes, I guess there'll still be Bibles laying around somewhere, but you're not going to understand it. And you will never remember this message. You will go out into eternity. You won't remember me or Brother Darrell or this message at all. But you could do something about it tonight. You could come tonight and make a surrender of your life to Jesus. Let's stand. Brother Darrell, if you'll come and accompany me. Jonathan, if you will lead us. And if you'd like to be saved, if you'd like to move your membership, if you'd like to just rededicate your life, if you'd like to just come pray for a family member that you're worried about, just slip up to the altar. Or if you want to be saved, come and talk to us. All to Jesus. Let's sing at least a couple of verses, maybe more.
All to